Yes, I welcome all of you to the Python class day 2. And in today's session, I'm going to discuss with respect to the identifiers, the reserved keywords that are there in the Python, and followed by the introduction to the data types. And lot more things with respect to the data types part. If you have studied with respect to Java, so that's completely different when you compare with respect to the Python. So what are the data types that are available here, so how internally it's going to work. So everything we are going to discuss now. And maybe people are busy with their work, and only for initial classes I would like to give the class recordings, and maybe later onwards, I won't support that, because you have to listen it in the live class, and if you have any doubts you can inquire me in the live class. But in the recordings it would be just like a you are going to watch a movie, it would be like that. Any which ways, we'll quickly start up with our topic for the day. I'll share the screen now. So after sharing the screen, let me go to the folder, and maybe I've kept it in the music folder, interesting mind 1, and day 1 is done, and day 2 is what we are going to start now. But before that, let me show you the concept once again. So this is what we were supposed to discuss. So in this, if you have observed carefully, so yesterday the introduction to Python is done with respect to the history, the features, and the importance in the installation of IDLE I've discussed. The feature, it's a theoretical part which I'm gonna give a notes for that, and you can go through that. And today we'll be starting with respect to the language fundamental. So in the language fundamental, the very basic happens to be the identifiers, and followed by the reserved keywords and data types. If possible, I would like to complete with respect to the typecasting also. So let us quickly start with the session. So I'm going to close this one. Let me come back and let me go to the day 2, and let me start with respect to the identifiers. And I have some prefixed the notes here. So is my voice is audible properly? Is there any voice breakage? If a voice is audible properly and if the screen is visible properly, do type S in the chat box once. Okay, so and from my side there would be no internet issue, so everything is fine. From your side also, please check the internet connection once before attending the classes. Any which ways. So when it comes to the language fundamentals, if you have already studied Java, so you have seen so how the language fundamentals will be there with respect to the Java. But here, when it comes to the language fundamentals with respect to Python, and overall, we are going to discuss the Python 3, version characteristics, not Python 2 version. So whatever the Python version 3 is there, that, features is what we are going to actually study in this particular course. In that, the most important and the very basic one happens to be the identifiers. So then what are identifiers? So identifiers in Python or identifiers in any language is nothing but a name. A name in Python is what we are going to call it as identifier. Our name, your name, everyone name, or any things name, everything that we are going to identify using that, we are going to name it as a identifier. So in a Python also, a name in a Python is called as an identifier. For example, it can be a class name, or it can be a function name, it can be a module name, or it can be a variable name. These are the possibilities that we can see. Either we will name a class, either we will name a function, either we will name a module, or in a very smallest unit, we are going to name a variable. So in that case, I'm going to consider a variable name. What is variable? Or what are the types of variables? In detail about variables, I'll speak it out. But the point is, if you are taking an alphabet like this, then we are going to consider it as a variable. But for today's class, don't look it in terms of variable, look it in terms of an identifier. To hold 10, I am taking one variable, and for the variable, I am supposed to keep the name, and name happens to be A. And whenever you are keeping some name, so you cannot keep the name however you want, you have to follow some rules and regulations. What are the rules and regulations that you need to follow? First of all, if you see the rules to define the identifiers in Python, The first rule says that it allows only characters are allowed in Python. Like, if you want to take, you have to take the alphabetical symbols. Either it will be a lowercase or it will be a uppercase. Apart from these characters, you can take up the digits, and it should be from 0 to 9. And you can take up the underscore symbol. And when it comes to Java, those who have already studied Java, you tell me, can you make use of dollar symbol with respect to the Java identifiers? If you feel S, type it as S in the chat box. If you feel no, just put it as no. Or if you don't know, just tell it as don't know. Okay, so few people are telling no. Kindly today itself get back there and check your Java basics also. So dollar symbol is valid there or not. But when it comes to the Python classes or in the Python concept, by mistake, if we are using any other symbol like dollar, then we will get a syntax error. It means what? In Python, whatever you are telling it as a dollar symbol is not acceptable. For example, I'm gonna tell like this. Say suppose if I tell my name is SAGR Sagar, and maybe I'll give some value happens to be 10. If I giving like this, don't you think it's a valid identifier? But if in case instead of S is also look like dollar, that is the reason I'll be taking S like this. SAGAR is equal to 10. And if I write like this is also an identifier, but it is invalid. I hope you got my point, right? All the characters you can use, maybe a combination of uppercase and lowercase, but you should never ever use the dollar symbol in Python. This point you keep it in the mind. Next, identifier should not start with the digit. What do you mean by that? Few people will write like this, maybe 10, and you can tell it as Tendulkar. This is valid or invalid? It is saying that identifier should not start. Okay, that means that this is invalid. But can I reverse it? I would say that Tendulkar, or I would say that Virat, and I would like to tell it as 10. Is that valid? 100% it is valid. When you go with the language to language, keep these points in the mind. In Java, you have a certain rules and regulations. When you come to Python, you have a different rules and regulation. And if you go to some other language, again, you have a different rules and regulations. Any which ways. Identifiers are case sensitive. This is very important. Of course, Python language is a case sensitive language. That means whenever you are taking, say, suppose the value like maybe I will consider, okay, so I have Manjunath here. I'll take it as maybe Manju. So is equal to what's your favorite number, Manjunath? Just put it in the chat box. And that if I take and followed by if I consider it as maybe Manju. So if I consider like 7 and followed by 7, is both are equal? Absolutely no. The uppercase Manju, that's a different entity, and lowercase Manju is a different entity. So that because of the identifiers are case sensitive, and the whole Python language itself is a case sensitive. So these are the things which we have understood now. Now let us see what is this identifiers all about. Alphabet symbols you can use either the uppercase or lowercase. If identifier starts with the underscore, then it indicates that it's a private member. If you have studied with respect to other languages, if you have studied, well and good. If you are not studied, still it is good. So there is something called as access specifiers and access modifiers. So when it comes to access modifiers, you have public, private, protected, and default in the Java language. In Python, if you are putting underscore symbol in the beginning, if you are prefixing, then it is considered as a private, right? Maybe in other language, you will type it as private, but here no need to type, just put a underscore symbol before starting a identifier. And next point would be identifier should not start with digit. Just now we have seen. And identifier are case sensitive. That also we have seen. Followed by we cannot use the reserved keywords as identifiers. What are reserved keywords? That means few names are kept in order to specify few things. Dog means it is the name has been kept to identify dogs. And if you keep the name for a human being, then how you are gonna call that person? Hey dog, come here. Just like that. So mango is a fruit name. So mango, you cannot keep it for a dog. Hey mango, come here. You cannot tell like that. So those are reserved keywords. Those are reserved for few things. Same way here also. For example sake, if I want to tell, so def is a keyword in Python. It is called as define for the creation of the methods and functions. So this def is used to define the user defined function in Python. As a result, it's a reserved keyword. We should be not using for identifier. And there is no length limit for Python identifier, but not recommended to use too lengthy identifier. See, name should be very small. It should be not like that some pen advertisement. You keep rating the name. What do you call it as that advertise Reynolds or some what do you call the Butterflow? Some pen advertisement is there, right? Keep rating the name because the pen is keep on writing that advertisement. I think you have seen, right? So it should be not like that. Keep it short. And when it comes to this, the dollar symbol is not allowed in Python. Thus, you keep it in mind. And which of the following are valid Python identifier? Try it out. I'll give you some examples. You should answer now. Put your answer in the chat box. I'm gonna give it like this. Let me tell it as sum is equal to 0. You quickly tell it as valid or invalid. You keep on giving the answers here in the chat box. Okay, so if it's valid, invalid, so you can tell it out. Okay, I would like to tell it as maybe the sum is equal to 15. Valid or invalid? Okay. So in that case, maybe I would like to take another one. In between, I would like to take it out. Is that valid? Okay. I would like to consider this. Is that valid or invalid? Okay. I'm getting few answers. So I would like to consider like this. Valid or invalid? Okay. I'll give up the answer at the end. Don't worry. Is this valid or invalid identifier? Okay, so let me start from the beginning. So this happens to be the valid one, and this happens to be the invalid one, and this happens to be again it's invalid. So after that, this happens to be a valid one. You can use it. So this happens to be invalid for identifier. It's not an invalid word, but it's a invalid for identifier because it's a reserved keyword. So then I'm going to say it as invalid because if comes under the the reserved keywords, which you should be not using it, right? So I have a note point here. So what is the note point says? And congratulations for those who have answered correctly, and keep interacting with in the class. That is the most important thing that is required. If identifier starts with a underscore symbol, then it indicates it is private. If identifier starts with double underscore, you have this option also, two underscores, indicating that. So it is gonna make the strongly private identifier. So what is this strongly, private identifier, weak private identifier? That I'll be telling you in the later classes when I take up the access modifiers in Python. But you can understand like this, single underscore also can be given, double underscore also can be given. If the identifier starts and ends with a two underscore symbol, then the identifier is a language defined specific name. It means that people will call it as a magical method. Magical method in the sense there are few inbuilt methods are there which has been built for a specific purpose. Those always named with the double underscore. So for the best example happens to be double underscore add, double underscore. So you can also have it like there is one more very important one, double underscore init, double underscore, which we are gonna see in the upcoming classes. But as of now, what is this magical method? All those things you need not to worry. But keep this in mind. For the inbuilt methods, you will be having double underscore as prefix and double underscore as suffix. So for the self, I'll tell when you are going to use this one, because for the self, we are not going to use the double underscore directly in all the cases. But for the magical methods, we'll do that. Any which ways. Further continuing, as I said, we should be never ever using the reserved keywords. So what are the reserved keywords you have understood? How many reserved keywords are there is what? Now we are going to check it out. Now, in Python, some words are reserved to present some of the meaning or functionality. Such type of words are called as reserved keyword. There are 33 reserved keywords available in Python. So I have mentioned all these things here. But if I'm mentioning, you need not to believe that, these are the, reserved keywords. I'll show you the proof for that. Any which ways. As a note point, if you observe carefully, all the reserved keywords in Python contains only alphabet symbol. There is no numbers. There is no special character. Nothing is there. Starting from true till you reach with, every reserved keywords is consisting of alphabets. That is the one observation. Second thing, except the following three reserved keywords, all contain only lower cases and alphabet symbols. If you observe carefully, true, false, none having the upper cases and others are having lower cases. In that case, if I want to show something to you, I would like to get back to the ideally. Let me open the ideally for you. Ideally is getting opened. Okay. So whenever the ideally is going to start, so I would like to ask a question here for my ideally. I would say the import statement. So what is this import? All these things you'll be studying. I would say import the keywords. You can tell it as it's a single word. You can have it as import the keyword. And if you press enter, there is no problem in this statement. That is the reason it is allowing me to go to the next line. If there is a problem, immediately it would have thrown me an error. So there is no problem as of now. Syntax wise, it is correct. Now, whenever I've imported the keyword, so using the keyword, I'm going to call a inbuilt method. So again, don't worry on what is this method, inbuilt method, import statement, on the day two itself, he's speaking on all these things. Don't worry on that. As and when the time comes, every concept in detail, I'm going to explain. But as of now, if I tell it as keyword, and if I tell a method name, you can see it is showing me the suggestion also. I'm going to consider this KW list, keyword list. And if I press enter, immediately it is going to give me the all the reserved keywords that is present with respect to the Python, right? Whatever I mentioned there, actually I've copied from here itself and pasted back in the notepad. Am I clear till here? So what are the keywords, reserved keywords that are present? And when you're going with the identifier, what are the rules and regulations that you need to be followed? So I'll do one thing, I'll copy paste it. That could be the better option. So I'm gonna take it out from ear to ear. So after copying it, let me minimize it and come back and paste it, right? So later, I'll put it into alignment, and while sending, I'll send it correctly, right? Maybe I'll put a line here and local, yeah, till year to year, you'll be having all the reserved keywords. Am I clear till here before going for the next concept? If you are completely cleared with identifiers and reserved keywords, type S in the chat box. Yes, everybody should respond, because by seeing your chat only, I can understand that whether you are getting the concepts or not. And if you have any kind of doubt, please make a note of it. And at the end of the class, or even after completion of the class, you can just ping me out in the WhatsApp, or you can ask me at the end of the class itself. Not a problem. But in between the classes, do not ask any doubts, because it is going to miss the flow and it would create the doubts for others also. So make a note of all your doubts if in case if you have, and keep it with you. And at the end, I'm going to solve all those things, right? Yeah. So we have understood what is identifiers. We have understood what is the reserved keywords. Now we'll go to the next concept. Before going to the next concept, if you go to any language, the most important thing happens to be the data types concept. right? And now also we are going to start with the data types. And if you have a bit idea about the data types in the other languages, like if you are come across Java, I would like to ask this question, not for my regular students. I want to ask it for some newcomers. So kindly answer for me if you know. If not, you can tell it as you don't know, not a problem. I'll ask it for Panchavati Hegade. So have you know the data types in other language? Yes, no. Because my students, I know they have studied Java and I've only explained the data types for them in Java. But for the newcomers, I want to understand. Panchavati, are you here? Forgot. Okay, fine. So Priya, can you answer? What do you know about data types? You can unmute yourself and you can speak. You need not to be type it. Okay, Priya, are you here? Okay, no worries. Then I'll ask with my. Okay, Priya is here.
Sir,
Yes.
float integer double.
Okay. Yeah. I'll ask for Sangram. Sangram, you should be telling this answer, Sangram. What are data types? What do you know about that?
Yes, sir. Data types are the identifiers.
Mm,
Data types are mainly, there are two types of data types.
mm,
I think there are two primitive data types and reference data types.
okay.
Primitive data types which can hold the value of the data, like byte, int, char, float, double, long. And primitive reference data types are the which can hold the address of the data.
Okay. That's great. That's cool. Okay. Any which ways. Now, whatever Sangram, the answer he has told, that's correct. In terms of Java. So now we'll start in terms of Python. So I'll click on my notes one, the data types. Let me go to this. Yeah, data types in Python 3. So data type, present the type of the data inside the variable and how it is going to present. That is what my duty here to explain. So in Python, we are not required to specify the type explicitly. I mean to say, in Java, you are going to tell it as int A or float B, or maybe you're going to tell it as string S. First only you have to decide the data type, then you have to tell it. But Python, it is not like that. Whatever the data that you're going to give, based on that, Python is going to consider the data type internally. That is the point I've given it here. Based on the value provided, the type will be assigned automatically. And hence, Python is a dynamically typed language. If you give it as 10, it will consider as integer. If you give it as 10.5, it will consider as float. If you tell it as true, it will be considered as Boolean. If you tell it as 2 plus 3j, it will be considering it as, the complex. And if you tell it as the name, then it will consider as string and so on. And when people ask you in the Java, like, what are the data types, you will tell there are two types: primitive data types, non-primitive data types. Primitive data types, you will tell, int, float, all those things. And when it comes to non-primitive, you will tell arrays, and you will tell it as strings, and you will tell it as collection module. But when it comes to the Python, overall, there are 14 data types, starting from the integer, int, float, complex, boolean, string, bytes, byte array, range, list, tuple, set, frozen set, dictionary, and none. So in this, if I want to do the classification from integer to string, whatever you are seeing, this is considered as a basic data type. Basic data type, or we can also consider it as a fundamental data type, right? And when it comes to the byte and byte array and range, these are considered as a basic data types. That means for a very basic few things, we are going to use this one. But when it comes for the list, tuple, set, frozen set, and dictionary, we are going to consider it as a advanced data types or advanced data structures with respect to the Python, right? So everything that is present here is going to represent a data format itself, whether it is an integer or it is a list. But you have in the two types, like a fundamental data types and advanced data type. Then what is this none? None means it is not going to return any value. In some of the programs, whenever we are writing, the program is not going to return us any value. So then we are going to have the none data type. This is how the data types has been classified with respect to Python, and all the 14s you have to remember, because one or the other will be using starting from the integer till the none. Yes. Now, before going with respect to the next concept, I would like to add a statement here. The statement says that in Python, everything is an object. If I want to explain this one, I have to show you a memory diagram and I need to explain, right? Keep observing. Yes. One important point is there here, which you need to understand the very basics of the Python that. So in entire, the Python courses, this will come again and again, the concept which you need to understand. Let me share you a whiteboard for this. And after sharing you the whiteboard, observe this one carefully. So I'm going to consider a value here. So before considering the value, let me minimize the text of it. Yeah, I would like to tell it as a is equal to 10. So when I tell it as this a is equal to 10, and I'm going to consider it as a is equal to 20. So one statement I have told just now, the statement says that everything in Python is an object. This statement, you keep it in the mind. Yes. Am I audible properly and the screen is visible? Respond once in the chat box.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So in Python, everything is an object. This point you keep it in the mind. Now, coming back to this whiteboard, so I have taken a variable. So for the variable, you need not to tell data type and you can directly assign the value based on the data that you're going to assign for RHS. The data type will be, considered by the PVM. That's a different story. I'll tell it in the later part. Now, when you take it as a 10, this 10 itself is an object. So if I want to represent that, I'm going to represent like this. So this is the object, and inside this, what is there? If you ask me, I would like to tell it as in this 10 will be there. For every object that is going to present in the memory, so you'll be having a memory address. So I would like to tell it as maybe 1000 happens to be the memory address, and let me change the color of it for a while. So this is the memory address, right? And who is going to hold this memory address? If you ask me, it is the variable a who is going to hold this memory address. So I'll be considering it as a. So that is the reason the a is pointing towards this object. This is the scenario which I'm trying to explain now. But next line also, if you observe carefully, it is showing that a is equal to 20. So it means that now the 10 will be erased and instead of 10, you'll be placing 20. If you are thinking in that way, it is wrong. Whenever you have 10 here, it is one object, and any object that is created, it is fixed. And if you try to modify that object, instead of modification, what will happen in the memory is a brand new object will be created. This one point you have to keep it in the mind. This comes throughout the Python programs. Again, I will repeat. If you have an object, if you try to modify it, instead of modification, brand new object will be created. That means when you tell a is equal to 20 in the next line, this 10 will be not removed and 20 will not come and sit here. Instead of that, a brand new memory will be created, and for that we are gonna tell it as in this 20 will be there, and for this also you will be having the address. Maybe I would like to consider this happens to be the 2000. Maybe I will write it as 2000. This is the memory address, and it's the assumption address. For the memory, there are so many address will be there, numbers will be there. I'm taking a assumption address. So what will be pointing for this? You'll be having a itself. Now the point is that whether one more a will be present in the memory, Absolutely no. There will be only one variable which is going to point for 10 also and for 20 also. This is the point, you have to keep it in the mind. What do you mean by this, sir? What do you mean by this is, whenever you have two different objects and still you can have one reference variable. I mean to say one variable can refer multiple objects. Whenever we see this line, we will feel like, okay, 10 is there, the 10 will be removed and in place of that 20 will come and sit. No, Python is going to work in such a way that now A will be pointing to 10, then A will be pointing to 20, and it will be keep switching depending on the situation. Is it clear for everyone? Yes. To identify this only, there are few inbuilt functions are there to check the type of the data, to check the address of the data, or to check, the value of the data. That is what we are gonna check it now, right? So what I'll be doing now here is, let me go to the IDLE, or let me go to the program, and let me open this demo program. Keep observing. I'll open the IDLE now. Let me close this. Okay, it's not accepting. Just a second. One second, guys. Let me open the IDLE part. Yeah, you can observe now. I'll tell it as file and I'll consider it as a new file. Let me minimize this. Let me close this. Let me close all this, the background running one. Let me close this as well. And I will share the screen. Do observe. So I'm going to consider with respect to the page. Let me tell it as file and I will save it as. Maybe I'm going to come for your batch wherever it is present. I'll go to music, here, Python, day2, programs, and here I'm going to consider it as demo1.py. Let me save it. Yes, now everything is fine. Now observe carefully. I'm going to consider first one, a is equal to 10. And after that, I'm going to print the value. If you want to print, you should be using a print function, right? Next, I'll be considering a is equal to 20, and after that again I am printing it, so I'm gonna consider it as print a. If I do like this, save and followed by function f5, you can see the result. You'll be getting 10 and 20 both, because I am typing in line by line. If in case if I do the changes like this, I will remove this one. Instead of removing, you can comment it also. So how to comment it in the Python, if you ask me? If you want to do the single line comment, you can tell it as hash. Okay, maybe more on the commenting part, on documentation part, I'll speak it later, but I will remove this itself. If I remove, now a is equal to 10, b is equal to 20, and now if I print a, so what will be the answer? Can you put it in the chat box? Will the answer be 10 or will the answer be 20? Very good. The latest change is what is gonna reflect. So I'll be telling it as save and followed by F1. So I'll be getting it as 20. I hope you got my point. Python is a interpreted language. If in case, if I put the print statement after the 10, it will be printing 10. I am putting after 20, so hence it is going to show me as 20. I hope I'm completely clear with this, right? Now, what I'll be doing it here, I'm going to introduce one more thing, how to check the data type. To check the data type, you have to tell it as the type function, and you have to tell for which identifier you are going to check the data type. I'm going to check what is the type of A. If in case, if I save it and if I execute it, I'll be getting it as it is 20 followed by, can you see the data type happens to be integer. Is it clear? So in the same way, if you want to check the memory location of that particular object, you are going to tell it as print ID of A. Clear with this? I'm going to save it and I'm going to execute it. Can you see it is showing some address? Yes, this is for 20. 20 is stored in the memory somewhere in this random number in that location. I've taken it as 1000 and 2000, right? In that place, instead of that, this random number will be there, and this varies from computer to computer and program to program. Now, if I close this, whatever I've told just now, I'll redo it. You observe carefully. I'll take all these things, copy it, and before the 10, after the 10 and before the 20, I'm going to paste this one. Is that clear for everyone? Yes. Now observe the magic in the result. So I'll be commenting this and I will be commenting this. This one concept, if you understand correctly, so remaining things easily you can get it. Now, if in case if I print, what will be my output? 10 and 20. I'll save it and I'll be executing it. 10 and 20 I am getting. Yes, no problem. Now, if I print the type and if I print the type, I'll save and execute it. 10 is also integer, 20 is also integer. But when it comes to a memory, if in case if I check the ID of it, and if I check the ID of it, if I save it and if I execute it, you can see is the memory is same or different. Don't see the first three numbers, you will feel like same. See the last three numbers. Is that same? Is the memory location is same or different? If you type it as DIFF in the chat box, if you feel different. If you feel same, type it as same. So much you will type in the WhatsApp and so much you will type in the Instagram. So type it here also. Yes, it's different. Now you got my point, what I was explaining. Now observe, see the diagram. Can you see? This is what I was telling. A itself is holding 10, A itself is holding 20, and both are integer, but both are different objects. They are not same object. This is present in some memory location and this is present in some memory location. Am I completely clear with this? Yes or no? Let me put a box for this. This is one scenario. This anytime you have to remember. Let me tell you a second scenario. These two scenarios, if you have understood, then Python is very easy for you. So next I would like to consider another scenario. A is equal to 10. Then next line I would like to consider it as B is equal to 10. And in this case also, if you observe carefully, what is going to happen in the memory is first 10 will be created. And I would like to tell it as 10 here. And for this, some address will be there, memory address, which I'm going to consider it as maybe 1000. Yeah. Now, this is going to point for the A. So I'm going to consider this. Maybe I'll take up it as A 1 second. So I'll be considering it as A, and this will be pointing towards this object. Right. Now, what many of them will think is that when I comes to B, B is also pointing to 10. That means same like this, one more object will be created and B variable will be there. And for that, separate memory address will be there. That is what people are going to think. No. In order to provide memory efficiency, Python has been developed in such a way that you should never ever waste your memory unnecessarily. For that, they have given a technique. What technique they have given? Very simple. You take B, and now B is also pointing to same object. What is the conclusion? In the first case, when multiple objects are there, you can have a single reference. In second case, when you have a single object, you can have multiple reference. These 2 points, if you keep it in mind, Python is easy for you. Right? I'll show you with the proof. What is happening here? A is also having 10, B is also having 10. Why you have to create duplicate object in the memory? Don't you think it's unnecessarily wasting the memory location? That is the reason they have come up with the idea. Yes, when you update, it will be reflecting on both the things. If you change a B value, don't you think a brand new value will be created? If you take A is equal to 20 and if you take B is equal to 20, again the same scenario. But if you change B is equal to 20, then it will come to another scenario. Very good question. I'll show you that also. Just a second. So if in case if I update the B value, just observe this one carefully. I'm gonna have it as 10 and maybe the address would be 1000. And when you modify or update the value of B, a brand new object will be created in the memory. So this will be 20 and maybe I'm gonna consider the memory address happens to be 2000. Sorry, I'm not changing the color here. It is taking some time. Yeah. So I'll consider this as 2000. And now if in case if you update, the memory would react like this. A will be there and B will be there. Let me write it here. B will be there and A is gonna point for this and B is gonna point for this. If in case if you try to modify, that's what I've told in the case 1 also. If you try to modify an object, instead of modification, a brand new object would be created. And if it is the same object, then multiple variables can point to a same object. So I would like to put up a box here and I'll show you the proof for both the things. So let me put it here and writing the diagrams, and these things would take some time in the initial days. And after that, the diagrams will come down and the programs, will go more. Any which ways, keep this in mind. So I suggest you to take the screenshot of this. Take a screenshot and type S in the chat box. Everybody, at least yes, no, interact in the chat box. That's great. Now observe, I'll get back to the program. Okay, so I'll close this one. If I come back, so previously I was having 10 year and 20 year. So now I'm gonna change this one. Let me have 10 and 10 year, but variable I will change it as B. Let me do the same thing. I will comment it and I will comment it. Maybe I will change it as B and the type I will change it as B and ID I will change it as B. Now you observe. So let me comment. Why I'm telling is Python, the syntax wise is it's very easy, but it's very crazy. Okay, that is what you need to understand. So I'll save this one and I'm going to execute this. 10 and 10 is executing. Yes, we feel like multiple objects are there. No multiple objects, only one object, but multiple variables are referring to it. Now I'll close this. Now type, you don't want to check it. It's anyways the integer itself. I'll check out the address. You can see here. Save it and execute it. Is the address is same or different? That is also 10. This is also 10, but variables are different, A and B. But still, what is the memory address? Memory address is same. What I mean is this one. Can you see this diagram too, which I have explained? So only 10 is there in the memory. So A is also pointing to 10. B is also pointing to 10 itself. This is what I was trying to explain. And in next case, Sangram has asked you doubt. If in case if I update, what will happen? A brand new object will be created, as simple as that. So if you get back, and if in case if I change it, and I will make it as 20. So when you do modification, brand new object will be created, and I will save and I'll be executing it. So what will happen? Obviously, the memory location, the address is going to change. Is that clear for everyone? Yes. Very good. So this one point with respect to the data types and with respect to the objects, if you have a clarity, so whatever the things that I'm going to explain from now onwards, it will be, very handy for you. You can easily get the point, whatever I'm going to tell, right? Yeah. So let me come back now. So all these case scenarios I will be putting in the notes, and I'm gonna give it for you. So for a time being, I will just copy it, and let me go back here, and maybe after this I will paste it back. But 3 scenarios are there. All the things I will give it here. So later you can go through that. It will be helpful for you. All the 3 cases, 1, 2, 3. But remember, diagrams, you have to take the screenshot and you have to maintain a notes. And for the diagrams, I'm not responsible. So don't ask me for the screenshot and all again, right? So you take up a screenshot and keep it with you. Yeah, let me go with the next point. If you have understood this one, the next things are very easy for you. You can see, note point, Python contains several inbuilt functions. There are so many inbuilt functions are there. That is the reason people love Python. I know you need not to worry. If you want to check the data type, then you have a type function to check the type of the variable. And if you want to check the ID, so then you have a ID to get the address of the object. And if you want to print, you have the print option to print the value. Now we'll start with the data type one by one. Which is the first data type which I have told? Integer. So let me start with the integer for the day. So I'll start with the integer data type. So when I start with respect to the integer data type, it says that we can use int data type to represent the whole numbers, the integral value. For example, I can consider a is equal to 10, and 10 happens to be the integer. And if I really want to check the type of it, you know what we are supposed to do. Use the type function and you give the variable name there. So the result that you're going to get happens to be the integer, right? Next, as a note point, you have to remember this. In Python 2, we have a long data type, which we were also having in our Java also. So we have a long data type to represent a larger value. But in Python 3, no such things. In Python 3, for everything, we are going to make use of only one thing, that is integer, right? That's the difference. When you learn multiple languages, you can easily compare with one another, and you will get even more clarity on whatever you have studied previously, right? Now we can represent the integer values in following ways. I think it is a bit of like it will look like a mathematics, but it's not a mathematics. Don't worry on that. I am also not that much interested or good in mathematics. But here, if you want to represent the integer data, so you have a decimal form, you have a binary form, octal form, hexadecimal form. So by default, Python is going to choose the decimal format. So what is this decimal format? Base 10, whatever the numbers that we are going to use in our regular daily life. So this, it is the default number system in Python. So ranging from 0 to 9. And if I tell it as a is equal to 10, this is the decimal representation. Now coming to the binary. Binary means that only zeros and ones. So when you come to the zeros and ones, so you have to prefix with 0 lowercase b or 0 uppercase b. Why this prefixing is required, sir? If you don't prefix with this, computer will consider, or the PVM is going to consider, or the Python is going to consider it as decimal itself. So suppose if you tell it as 1111, so it is going to consider it as 1111, like that. In the decimal format it will consider, but we don't want that. It has to be considered in the the binary format. So in the binary format, if you want to tell, you have to go with either lowercase or uppercase. So you can tell it like this: a is equal to the lowercase p, and you can check it out. And if you try to print the value, so let me see what we are gonna get it here. So let me get back, clear this, paste it back, and let me print the value a, save and execute it. And what is the value that we are getting here? 15, 1, 1, 1. Okay, so 2 to the power of 0. Okay, so we are getting 15 here. I hope you got the clarity. But if in case, if I don't prefix here, instead of this, if I directly write this, and I'm gonna remove this one, so it will be considered as what? 1111, as simple as that. You got a clarity? So how you need to convert this? Let me comment this one. Let me put it above. So this is how you are going to do the base conversion. The next point happens to be the same thing. So whenever you are having the base conversion, instead of 0 or 1, if you give a different number, you are going to get the error here. What do you mean by that? I'll come back here. So instead of this, I will tell it as 2 and I will save it and I'm gonna execute it. Immediately it is going to tell me that invalid digit 2 in binary literal. Got the point? You should have either 0 or 1. So, these minute points, learn it in the initial stage so that you will never do a mistake again. So I will comment this also and let me copy it and paste it above. So remove it and make it as 111 itself, right? So you came to know that what are the valid and invalid things around. So in the same way, when I minimize it or close this part, yeah. So next coming octal form. Octal form means 0 to 7. And when you are going with 0 to 7, you have to tell 0 small lowercase o and 0 uppercase o. So you can go up to 7. So you can go up to 1, 2, 3, and you can go up to 7. But if you go 8, 6 and all, so it will give you an error. So you can try this also. It is going to give you the same result, whatever I have told just now. Hexadecimal, so starting from 0 going till 9 for numbers. From 10 onwards, alphabets will start. It starts from A and it will go up to F. F for 15th. 0 to 15 will give you 16. Now in that case, when you go with this option, it is valid. I can give it here itself. So whatever you are seeing, it is valid because F is there within the range, A is there, C is there, E is there. This is valid. And second one is you have to tell, is that valid or invalid? B, E, E, F, beef. Valid or invalid? It is valid because A to F is the range. And when you go for the next one, it is invalid because you have R here. So the ranges will go up to only F. I hope I'm completely clear with this. Being a programmer, we can specify literals. What is this literals? Literals are nothing but the RHS that you are going to provide. For every literal, it is having its own corresponding data type. If you are taking integer, it is called as integer literal. If you are taking float, it will be a float literal and so on. Now, literal values in the decimal, binary, octal and hexadecimal forms. But PVM will always provide values only in decimal form. So it means default value happens to be the decimal format. If any extra fittings you needed, then you have to go with respect to the prefixing and suffixing the things. Now whenever I go with this, so let me have a example here. Come back, predict the output for this. I would like to say A is equal to 10, and if in case if I print it, what will happen? You have to predict. Next, just I will tell B is equal to 0 O and followed by, let me tell it as this. I'm not gonna pronounce what is that, you have to tell. And I will tell 0x and followed by 10. And D, I'm gonna tell it as 0B followed by 10. And I would like to tell it as print A, and let me repeat it multiple times because I can easily comment it and ask for the data from you. So let me print it back. So I think 4 are there. So I will change it to B and I will change it to C and I'll change it to D. And now I'll comment it here. So what is the answer for the first one? If I print A, what is the answer I'm going to get? Can you people tell me out? Okay, I will tell it for you. It's very easy. That's why I will tell it as 10. So can you tell the answer for this? Answer for B. Okay, so 2 is the answer given by Manjunath. And any other answer? Just see what is that. Is it octal or hexadecimal or binary? C and answer. Any other answer? Okay, they say it's 2. Let me keep it as 2 for you. Okay, what about C? C. What is C? Hexadecimal. What would be your answer? Type it out. in the chat box quickly, guys. I don't have much time here. Yeah, again, Padmanav is saying 10. Okay, I'll keep it for you. So what is the answer for D? Manjunath, for everything you are telling 2. Oh, which is 2? You type along with the variable name. B2, or like with the alphabet, you tell it out. Okay, tell me the last one. B2. Okay, fine. Last one, D. For D is also 2. Okay, I don't know. So you people are telling it. I'm believing it you, right? So let me save it and let me execute it. So A happens to be 10. You can observe it here. Yes, it's true. I have given this answer. And B is not 2, it is 8 because of the octal 0 to 7. And next one happens to be the hexadecimal. So this happens to be showing it as 16. And last one, it is showing it as 2. So for the binary. So for binary, you are correct. Decimal, you are correct. Octal and hexadecimal. So kindly check it once. I hope I'm completely clear with this. So let me change it here, 8 and 16. So 8 and 16. I'll copy all these things, come back to the notes. Let me move it aside. Yeah, so after coming to this, I'm gonna paste it back here, right? So these are the answers which we got. Let me quickly push it up. Yes. So before going for the next base conversion, so let me click up here. Yeah, so let me start with the next one now, the base conversion. Whenever you're going for a base conversion, if you want to convert, you have a specific functions for that. So what are the functions? So instead of you prefixing like this 0b, 0x, 0o, so this doesn't look good. It's like a manual work. So instead of that, actually you can go for the functions which are available. If you want to convert into binary, so you can go with respect to the binary. So how the binary conversion is going to look like, I'll be showing for you now. Let me go to my ideally page and let me cancel this one. So I'm gonna consider this happens to be, maybe I'll close it for a while and I'll open just the interpreter format. That could be easier for me compared to the circus. Here itself I'll show you. I'm gonna consider it as 15 if you observe. So by default it is going to consider what as a decimal. If I enter, 15 is displaying. So if in case if I want to convert this, I have to put it in a bin function. So I have to convert into binary and I will say print. See, instead of telling it as print statement multiple times, I've came to the interpreter mode, so it will be easy for us. Okay, again, instead of multiple type, printing print, so this is even more easier. Then and there itself you'll get a result out. So this is how you can convert decimal into binary. So whenever you are having the other format, say suppose I'm going to consider a octal format. So you may look like it's like a mathematics class, but don't feel like that. It's only the conversion part which I'm going to show now. So I'll be considering it as 10 itself, just now whatever you have seen. So I'll be converting into the binary. And when I try to convert into binary, okay, 1 and 0 would be confusing, just put it as 1 and 1. And if I consider like this, if you consider a octal number, we don't know what exactly that octal number, but if I convert into the corresponding binary, so it is going to convert. So from one format to all the other 3 formats, you can easily convert it. That is the main point here. Clear with this? You can try it out for the hexadecimal also. So if in case, if I go with the next one, the octal, for octal also same thing. If you use the octal function, so you are gonna get the result back there. So I'm gonna have a few example for that also. Let me minimize this, just a second, get it back the ideally part. Yeah, now observe, for octal also same thing. So I'll be having the octa and maybe some numbers if I want to take which one, 12. So in the decimal format, if I'm going to consider, in the octal format, this happens to be 14. I mean, And in the same way, if in case if I want oct of maybe 0b and 1111, and if I press enter, okay, so in the binary format it is not accepting. That's okay. Let me try it out with capital B.
Sir.
Instead of 0, I've given as O, I think.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes.
Yes. I've given it as B and 1111. Okay. So then we'll be getting a corresponding result, right? So any built-in function that you're having, so just use that built-in function instead of prefixing, so you can easily have a conversion. And for a hexadecimal also same thing, you can try it out, the hexadecimal to octal, hexadecimal to normal, the binary, you try to convert it. Okay, so you'll get the point, right? I'll set up few examples here before giving up the notes, then I will share the notes with you, right? Next, this is all about the integer data type, guys. Now we'll move on with respect to the next one, which happens to be, we are going to call it as float data type. Out of 14, we have done with the first one, we are going to second one. Float data type, when you go, we can use float data type to represent the floating point values, that is decimal values. Like, if you have f is equal to 1.234, and if you check the type of it, I mean to say, if you tell it as print the type of f, so then you'll be getting it as float. So when you're gonna represent this one, the floating point values using the exponential form, like if you want to have like exponential form 1.2 e3, so many zeros would be there, exponent form, so then you can have it, not a problem. So you can easily represent that also. This is one more option. Instead of using the lowercase, if you use uppercase, the main advantage of exponential form is that we can represent the big values with less memory. Why this option is given, that is what you need to understand. Okay, so we don't want to spend more amount of memory here. With a very less amount of memory, we can store the values. And as a note point, we can represent the int value in decimal, binary, octal, and hexadecimal, but we can represent the floating values only using decimal format. This is what the main advantage which you have to remembering it here. So if in case for that, if I want to show some example here, maybe I will cancel this and I'll reopen the interpreter shell. Yeah, so observe now. I'm having f is equal to maybe 10.5. So it is gonna give it for me. So I'll tell it as print type of f, and I'm getting as the point. And let me tell it as print f itself. 10.5 is given back. But if I take it as f is equal to 0, okay, 0 b, and maybe 11.01, something like that, it is not accepting. You can see it here. So just if I press enter only, it is not accepting, and it is saying that it's a syntax error and it is invalid syntax. It means that, so whenever you are handling with the floating point, so you should always go in decimal form. It will not accept any other format. So just quickly take it up and copy it and paste it back here. Okay, so it has not pasted. Okay, I'll give that program, don't worry, I have with me. The next one after the floating point, we have a next one called as a complex data. And when it comes to a complex data, the complex number is of the form, okay, you have two types here, the imaginary and followed by the real part. So like if you take 3 plus 5j, so you are gonna have the real one, the 3, and 5j happens to be the imaginary part here. And this is how the complex numbers are shown. And in the real part, if we use int value, then we can specify that either by decimal or octal or binary or hexadecimal, but imaginary part should be specified only using decimal format. Let's see how this is gonna work for us. So let me consider one small example here. Do observe carefully. Let me open this one for the complex data, and I'm gonna have it as A is equal to maybe 0b, and I'm gonna have it as 11 plus 5j. Accepted? Yes, accepted. Now I'm gonna print this one. So if in case, if you really wanna print this one, you are converting into binary. That 1 1 means what? Binary to decimal, 2 to the power of 0 1. Okay, so it would be 3. So I am gonna tell it as you print A. See, you need not to tell print A. Just if you tell A also, it would be printed. That is the easiness of using the interpreter shell programming, right? Now I will tell it as A is equal to 3 plus 0b and 11j. Is that acceptable? Let me check it out. Immediately it is saying it is not acceptable. That means when you go for complex, you have a real one and you have an imaginary one. For a real one, the conversion is acceptable, but for the imaginary part, you have to represent in the decimal format itself. That is what they are trying to tell it here, right? So I will copy this one and come back here and paste it out, right? So let me go for next point. Even we can perform operations on complex type values. How you can perform the some of the operations on the complex value is quite simple. Observe now carefully. So I'm gonna remove this one. Let me open a new one. Okay, so observe now. I will take it as A is equal to 10 and I will consider it as 1.5j. So I'm gonna press enter. You can take the imaginary part in the kind of a floating number. It is accepting. So in the next line, I will consider it as 20. I'm gonna consider it as 2.5j. And apart from j, if you take any other thing, it won't work. So that you keep it in the mind. I'll tell it as c is equal to a plus b, just adding them. And in the next line, I'm gonna print c. So I'm gonna get it as 30 plus 4j. So in this case, if I want to check the type of C, and if I press enter, it is clearly going to show us this happens to be a complex data. I hope you got the point. With the complex data type also, we can do some of the operations. So let me come back here and paste it out, right? Then complex data type has some inbuilt attributes to retrieve the real part and imaginary part. This plays a vital role. Please listen to this carefully. How, if you ask me? Quite simple. Let me close it. Double click it here. It's there. Yeah, observe. I would like to consider maybe x is equal to 10.5 plus 3.6j. This is what the complex number that we are having. And in the next line, if I try to print x, I'm gonna get it back. After that, I would say x dot real. There is an inbuilt method for that. If I tell x dot real, I'm gonna get the real part of it. And if I tell x dot maybe imaginary, so for that you have to tell it as imag. And if you tell that, you're gonna get a 3.6. So like that, you have some inbuilt attributes to retrieve the real part and to retrieve the imaginary part of a complex number. Let me copy it and come back, paste it here. Okay, so it's a dynamic memory. If I close it, it's gonna remove it out. Okay, not a problem. We'll go with the next one. We can use the complex type generally in the scientific application and electrical engineering application. If you get a time across, kindly go through it. Okay. And the next data type happens to be the Boolean. Today I'm gonna cover basic data types or the fundamental data types. Maybe in the tomorrow's class, all the remaining thing, including the typecasting, is what we are gonna cover in detail. Boolean data type. We can use this data type to represent the Boolean value. The only allowed values for this data type are true and false. That's all. Yes or no, or 1 or 0. So if in case if I take it as B, you can consider this happens to be an example. So and if I try to print the type of it, it will be given it as Boolean, right? Whenever you are dealing with respect to the Boolean, so you can check with the value like yes or no answers. So for that, I'm gonna consider the page. Yeah, observe now. I'll tell it as A is equal to 10 and B is equal to 20. And I want to check is A is greater than, maybe this is a great confusion always, greater than B or not. And whatever the result that gonna return for me, I'm gonna store it in B and I'll press enter. And in the next line, I'll print C. So I'm checking that is A is lesser than, okay, the symbol always confuses me even today, whether it is greater than or lesser than. So you can see the resultant value. So you are gonna get the result as true. That means, so B is greater than A. So that is the value that is there. And if in case, if you try to have like this, let me check it out. True plus true, and if I enter, I'm gonna get the answer as 2. What it means? True means 1, another true means 1, 1 plus 1 is 2. That's how the computer is calculating. If in case, I'll tell it as true minus, okay, I'll consider it as plus, true minus false. Okay, so 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 minus 0, it is giving it as 2, right? False means 0 here. That is what you have to remember, 1 and 0. So you can deal with the Boolean data types like this. So let me minimize this. If I delete, it would go wrong. I'll paste it back, right? This is all about Boolean data type, guys. The basic data types anyways you would be knowing. Need not to worry too much on this. But actual story starts from the list, tuple, set, dictionary. Those are very, very important when it comes to the data types in Python. Nevertheless, this is not so simple. This is also is very important when you're working on the programs. And very which ways, I'll give the introduction part with respect to the string, but the complete overview on the strings, I'll be giving it in tomorrow's class itself. Okay, I'll do one thing. If I start with string, if I give half a story of it, it doesn't look good. So from the string, I would be doing it in the next class itself, the entire story with respect to the strings, introduction to the strings, the main picture still it's there, but the overview of the strings and the remaining things, I'll be giving it in the next class. But I'll save it for a while. But I want to recap what are the things that we have seen for the day. So let me go to that page and let me go to the music folder, Python, and followed by day 2 and data types 1. So this is what we were studying all about. We have done with this 4 for the day, and this is what I'm planning to complete it today, but it couldn't happen. If I start now, it will go up to, it will extend the timings, which I don't want to do it. And tomorrow from this till this, I would be completing it. Tomorrow the data type would be completed, and once the data type is completed, day after tomorrow it's all about operators, and later onwards the conditional statement, iteration statement, transfer statement, those things, and it will be keep on moving. Is it clear for everyone? Yeah. Now let me stop the recording for the day.